I'm going to do a quick video about the load times performance stats and testing pull request. It's quite an in-depth pull request with quite a lot of changes. I'm going to talk through it anyway. So the overall goal of the pull request is to see if Etherpad has been slowed down by a commit pull request or whatever. Um, to see if our work that Null is doing at the moment around minification and caching actually has a significant impact and work so we can test it on page load times and also amount of files transferred and also stuff like gzipping and also max age. So when a file is due to expire to make sure that it stays in cache. And then on top of that, we also have to check if um, sort of plugin files, if they've been modified, that they're not cached. So if a dev's working and they've got their max age set to 0, we need to make sure that that's always respected and we get the most up-to-date files. So not all of these bits are solved by now, but as you can imagine, it's quite an in-depth pull request. And whilst I was working on that, I decided to also include logic for server startup times because it fell under performance. Um, so this is not particularly very interesting video. It's basically me reading off a page and talking through the problem and how we went and solved it. So we went about solving it by we use the mocker test a lot. So we basically set timeouts for pretty much for lots of things, and I'll go through each of the things and how we implement them shortly. But this is just giving a high level overview. Um, uh, in the pull request, I also included some of the LinkedIn just as a general tidy up. I was touching every file anyway, so I figured whilst I was at it, I'd do linting and set timeouts. I got the timeouts by running the logic multiple times on quite a slow device. The reason I used a slow device is it should replicate something similar to what we see in CI. Um, I am fully aware that at some point in time we'll probably want some sort of benchmark or baseline values that we go from, but to get it sort of shipped and working and in production, I wanted to get it done with static values. Um, so, uh, so the big thing here is it exposes to stats. Um, so basically, there are some value here. I think I've got an instance running. Yeah. There are some values here. This start duration, so it's at the top. Um, what I've done is you'll see these start durations. These come from core, so this is a core change. There's very few core changes, I'd say, here, other than the timeouts, and then this exposed 5 values. I can actually clear this up as well. It's only about, I think, 10 extra lines in this specific part. But basically, these are the durations from 1 being the very first thing that happens. We do a load settings, and then as time goes on, sorry, no, the durations are as how long these things took. So the create settings function took 9 seconds. The load plugins took 5 seconds. So you can see we're running roughly a 15-second startup time, unless it's this instance. I'm just checking to see if there was anything else that I put in root. No. So then the second part is a plugin. And I'll give a very brief. I'll tell you what the plugin does first. The plugin is responsible for exposing these stats, and it gets them from from running the test. From visiting a pad. You don't have to run the test runner, but it's probably recommended that you do, so that it's similar. So within there, you'll see the Etherpad hooks are timed out. So you've got the timestamp of the meet, and there's also a duration, so how long it took for it to get to processing it, and then how long. Uh, and this is from, I think it's from document ready. I need to check these values. They will be in here. So basically, what I do is I get the date now, and I store that as a value, and then for durations, in here, I take it away from the current time. So basically, it works backwards. So uh, the basically post date in it was 559 seconds after document ready. Um, it's a bit confusing, and I'll probably change this so that it makes a bit more sense. But 8 init doc body head was 100 seconds after document ready, and yeah, so it is a bit confusing. I'll probably make document ready be uh, 0. So that's your baseline, and then post 8 init will probably be 559, which is 559 milliseconds after document ready. So these are useful to have, and to just make sure that something doesn't increase those values a lot. Obviously, if you've got a heavy function happening in it's initialized, or if we implement something that slows these down, then that'd be useful to have. And then these, so then keep them going through what's available in the plugin logic. There's this performance object. Performance object is taken straight from the editor. It includes basically a load of stuff. There's a bunch of details on it. I'm not super familiar with it, but I'm sort of familiar enough to get an idea of what it's putting in there. And it's basically timestamps of when the connection started and when it had once it had finished connecting. So this is useful to just see like connectivity events, when the DOM was interactive, blah 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 blah. And then individual load times. So how much time is spent in domain lookup, TCP time, secure section, blah blah blah. The response time of the server. All right. So this is for. So again, what's happening here is that if I were to visit some random pad, you can see my response time is incredibly high here. But that's just because of because I'm connecting. If I was connecting over IP, it'd be a lot quicker. I have incredibly long DNS times. Ignore the Firefox can't connect issue. So what's happened there is as I've connected, the plugin logic, which can be seen here. So this plugin logic on post dates in it has taken a load of values, so performance from the DOM, not from the DOM, from the browser. Got the load times, got the size data, and then it sent it over a WebSocket message, stringified, and then that lands back with the server in this file. So we get it as a message, and then we store that as a global object with a stats gauge. That's what means we can see it in stats. And then obviously we just pass it before we start to we pass it, and then once it's been passed, and it works up here. Just checking something. Yeah, so that works quite well, and it's quite clean, and it means that you've got all this information available that you can then run back-end tests if you so choose. Or let's see if we've got more. So this is load sizes here. You can see basically transfer size. I'm not particularly sure how consistent transfer size is, because even if I do Control Shift Delete to clear all the data, then Control Refresh. We'll see. This might work better now. Okay, so that's pulled up a load of files. So now if I F5 that stats, we should see a lot more in the way of. I think we're in the wrong. We're in load times. We're not in load times. We're in load sizes. Oh, actually, no. You see, transfer size is correct now. So basically, once you're on a second page load, you'll expect this transfer size to be lower. Now, the cool thing about having these values here and in the stats is I can therefore go to. Do I have one running? Yes. I can use a test framework now. So we can also expose the test via a plugin, which again is super nice. So again, a lot of this has been pluginified. Very little is in core. And so a lot of stuff's hard coded, right? So there's a lot of hard coded timings here, which I've just basically pulled out, and then we add for an allowance in all tests. So let's look through this code. So basically, starts off here. So we get average fetch times initially, and we also test the values. We'll go through the test values function after I've talked about the logic. So basically, we open one pad, we test it. Then we open a second pad, and we check to see if it was faster, because in theory, it should be faster if minification is on. So it's really as simple as that. But on top of that, we do a bunch of more clever checks. So this is to get average fetch time. So we average fetch time of the first. What I could also do is an average transfer size. That'd be no work at all. And obviously the average transfer size first time round should be, whatever we actually run at, which I can never remember. 20k, but no, I'm on stats. I was gonna say, yeah, whatever we run at, who cares? And then run it again, and it should be basically a fraction of the original first run. So get stats, all it does, it gets the JSON file, super simple. Make sure that we don't cache because that can sting you. And then this is the test values function. So it's relatively rudimentary, but it does the job. So I'm basically making this so that I've got easy access to these constants. And then I'm checking the values. So here you can see I have values that I check that again hard coded. I'm just checking to see whether this startup was within what we allow as an allowable startup duration. Now, this isn't for production instances. This is purely for CI. Okay, so this is CI work. This is not something you're going to install on the production instance. This is purely written by someone who can't spell performance. Okay, so there's nothing particularly fancy here. I just take away the start time to make sure that it's within criteria. Nothing fancy. This is one of the sticky areas that I'll need help with. For some reason, when I run my timing checks, I'm just going to drop that. I'm actually going to drop. Yep. For some reason, when I run my timing checks, when it's in an iframe, it's roughly 7 times slower. So if I get the initial values and then I check them against what happens in the iframe, for some reason it's 7 times slower, and I don't know whether that's to do with cache or something. I also basically say if it's less than 100 milliseconds, then it's fine. It has to be more than 100 milliseconds for us to care, and it has to be 7 times second slower. So that's something we need to look at. I thought I'd put a to do. Need help here, please. Similar here, but nothing anywhere near. I just I allow 10% deviation on time. That seems totally fine to me if something makes it 10% slower than the currently statically stored value. And obviously we're going to be updating these statically stored values over time, and they're really easy to get right because we push them here. So the raw values are here. So where's performance, load sizes? So it's all here, right? So if we want to rewrite that, then all we have to do is just make it so we've got to the point where we're optimized, get these values again, and then statically store them in this test.js file. Again, it's a V2 thing to make this automated, but for now it seems fine. So once we've done a bunch of work to store them again. Here you can see I do the same, just 10% deviation. So just these are the checks. I think there's 5 different things we test against. Yeah. 6 if you take into account that we're checking second load. And that's pretty much it. I should just check. So how well have we done so far? What's been accomplished? Well, I've looked at pre-existing solutions and found a lot of issues and bugs and blah. Just decided to just do it pretty much from scratch. I did get the mock timing data from CI, both front end and back end, and then hard coded. I haven't decided on data endpoints for what really matters, and this is because we need to have, I guess, a conversation around. I think that would be quite a natural thing as the minification and caching stuff is improved. I think you'll say, I want to have a benchmark for this, and then you'll send or you'll edit the plugin to facilitate that. Again, it shouldn't be a lot of work. That's all. So this MVP is practically done, but I do need a little bit of help with a globe. So like, sucks, but this is the best way that I could think to do it. Right. So here I have to set window.top for a load of stuff because these guys can't talk to each other. These different things, but I need to store their start time. So what when the plugin executes this function that is attrib classes, or this plugin you probably say, then store this on window.top. Now obviously that's not ideal, but I need to do that there because toolbar in it has a totally different is in a different iframe. And I really didn't want to start doing a load of binds and yeah. So I'd love a suggestion on how I can cleanly do this that doesn't have a global leak. I do need help there, and I've put a bit of critical to do, so I need help there. So minify set to true performance specific test. Yes, I do need to pass whether minification is on or not to the front end test runner because on second pad load it probably won't be that much quicker if minification is set to false or max age is set to 0. So I still have that work to do to make sure that we don't actually even check second pad, I suppose, if minification is false. There was something though, I did actually decide that it kind of made no sense to run these tests on minification false unless we actually want to check that for developers. But then I was like, well, it's a lot for CI to handle to have to do an extra test every time when let's face it, if minifications if if Etherpad is minifying or it's storing files in cache, we're going to notice really early on as developers because that is we run it with minification false or with minify false and max age 0. So I don't know whether we need that in CI because we're going to experience it really early on. So anyhow, yeah, it's no massive. It's just tiny amount of work to put it in, and I can definitely do it. It's just, I think it's more whether computationally speaking, it's worth having CI coverage. I don't actually think that it is because it'll slow everything down, but I'm open minded. And then this is again same. So this is just exactly coming off what I'm saying. If the max age is set to 0, and if I is set to false, then ensure modifications to files are available to pads. I feel like we'd notice that. I feel like if you were to put forward, it's something to develop for a change in caching and minification, I feel like I'd notice that in my plugins pretty much straight away when I'm out developing and stuff. So I'm not sure we really need that within CI, but again, I'm open-minded. Okay, no, I'm going to keep running through a bit quicker now, so I want to wrap up. But so these are the tests. The initial page load, we've talked about that. Time to load, load size, when you can get around to time to edit. Now this is huge, this initial time to edit. This is something that Google Docs does incredibly well. Word Online sucks it and all the other editors pretty much suck it. But basically what Google does is it renders a page first with a caret and you can start editing before it's done practically anything else. You don't even have a toolbar. And I think that's a really clever way of doing it. And this isn't something that we will be fixing in this pull request or will be fixing within this even before V2. But it's something that is really important to users being able to hit up content, write on content, collaborate on content, and not caring about all the cruft that's going on around. The cruft can just be sideloaded, plugins and stuff can come in, even formatting of the document. It doesn't need to all be there and super as a primary thing. Primary thing should just be basically a notepad. Like I have something in my head, I need to be able to get it down. That needs to be the first thing, and then everything else after that is in an order of priority. So it's something for the future just to bear in mind. And now that we've got that value, post dates in it, I think is the correct point where you have a caret, but we'll need to validate that. But it's certainly having these values. Oh yeah, and that brings me nicely on to the next thing, graphing. So I've spent quite a bit of time now on graphing. I've still got work to do, but basically stats will be the endpoint for what will be Grafana. So I'm going to work on this, and you shouldn't have to. I kind of wanted to just be able to pass this off to you as a here, install this plugin, and you're pretty much done. And that might still be the case. I may still be able to get away with that, but I don't think so because of the core bits. But and I also need help on a couple of bits as per usual. So I'll just quickly show you Grafana. I'm not going to spend too. You've probably seen it before, but basically this is where we're at so far. We've got Node.js stuff, which is again how I've been able to check the. For example, let's review that. So then let's look at not 30 minutes. Let's look at the last 24 hours. So this is video.etherpad.com. So this is how I was able to really get down with GT and see that memory usage hasn't been too high. But what you will notice in Grafana at the moment is that we've not got any Etherpad specific stats in there. So my job end of this week, early next week, will be to gather figure out a way to get Prometheus, which is a part of Grafana, to pick up those values from stats.json. And that will be nice to have. That'll be really useful because in theory we then see like a huge change when we change the server from the V1 sort of rendering engine over to your new engine or whatever we're calling it. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I need help with this weirdness here. I also have the weirdness in globals that I need help with. Here's some notes for you if you do want to read further on, and then these are all points. Okay, buddy. I think that's it. See you soon.